Hello, everybody.
Hi.
I think we're a small group today. Maybe it's the end of May busyness of everything that's going on at the end of the year here. We'll give it another minute or so and see if anybody else joins us before we get started. How is everybody doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. Good. I feel like we've gone instantly to summer here.
We have.
Like, weather-wise.
Well, in New York, we have also, but by Saturday, it's supposed to be 57 degrees. So,
Right.
and last night we were having a parents' night and we got hit by a thunderstorm. I know New Hampshire got hit by it because my husband's co-teacher was on from New Hampshire and it was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it dropped like 10 degrees in 10 minutes, I think. It was interesting. So my husband was grilling at the time, so.
and it got super dark.
Yeah, it did. Well, I think we could probably get started. So very excited about our guest today. And as usual, I'm gonna let Camilla do our introductions.
All right, great. Thank you, Camille. So today we're really lucky to be hearing from Martha Carver, who has been a co-director of the CGMS leadership program since its inception. Montessori education has been a huge part of Martha's life for over 30 years. She's an early childhood trained and spent many years as a Montessori guide before becoming a school administrator, and she's actively the head of school of Rock Prairie Montessori School and owns a Montessori material company. Martha graduated from the Endicott College with a BA in Liberal Arts Studies with an emphasis on Montessori education. She considers herself a lifelong learner and often attends conferences and seminars, as well as being a conference presenter and consultant. And she's here to share her expertise on how you can get your community through difficult times. And she's been on the foreground of that as an administrator. So I'm going to hand it over to her. She has a presentation ready. And yeah, so all yours, Martha.
Thank you. Thank you, Camille and Camilla. And welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be here and connect with more Montessorians, leaders and people in the field and people that support Montessori. And as Camilla said, it really is, Montessori is my life's work. I have other hobbies too, but they all focus around Montessori. When you've been immersed in it as much as I have, and it becomes like your second nature, I think you look through everything with the Montessori lens, and how you go through life, how you work a business, how you communicate with others. And I find it a comfortable place to be. So I love being with our Montessori people. So thank you so much for inviting me. And I hope that what I might be able to share with you all will be useful during this time. So I have a short presentation with a little storytelling, and I try to throw in a little humor where I can, because you have to be a leader. You have to be able to laugh sometimes, even when things are tough. And then I'll open up for questions and comments, and enjoy your company as well. So I appreciate it. Thanks much. So let's get her started. Okay. All righty. So my presentation today is just a snippet about how to guide your community through difficult times. And as you know, I'm the head of school of Rock Prairie Montessori School. We are in Janesville, Wisconsin, and it's a private nonprofit school that's been in existence since 1997. We have this year we have less enrollment, less Children's House, less toddlers, primarily because of COVID. But we really feel and are seeing our enrollment bump right back up to where it used to be. So we offer a parent education program called Montessori Beginnings, So it's a parent infant. And that is occasionally, usually once a week, but we did not offer it this COVID year. Toddler, children's house, also called primary, lower elementary class, upper elementary class. And we made the plans and had to stick through it, even through COVID, to open a middle school this year and do a build and add on to our building. So timing wasn't really great, but it was successful. And that's just life. I'm the co-director of the leadership program, which is a soon to be MACD accredited leadership course through the Center for Guided Montessori Studies. I enjoy connecting with other leaders, and I learn from them every day. And that's how I kind of view as a lifelong learner. I'm the owner of Bluestem Environmental Education. It's a small materials company. Probably going to be trying to sell it over the next year or so because the leadership program is taking more of my time. And, you know, as leaders, somewhere along the line, we should stop and think, are we too overextended? Where do we need to cut back? So that's part of my gig. I am what I would call nature-based. So I view with that Montessori lens, but I'm very much someone who's, if I'm not in school, you're going to find me out in the woods. So difficult times arise because it's life. It just truly is. And a school is a community. So when you can anticipate a situation first. So probably my most recent one would be COVID. In January, I really keep up with current events and news, and I was hearing rumblings about the virus. So over years, I have had the experience that the more I can anticipate and formulate solutions and problem solving ahead of time, the less stress it is on me if it should happen to occur. So with COVID, in January, I met with our team members, administrative team, and then the curriculum coordinators of every level, and said, I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a feeling that we could be closed for a while or might have to do some virtual. So let's start thinking what would be the most important things to send home. Our school is a nonprofit private school, so yes, we are tuition based. And you can believe, as many of you, if you are in that situation, are wondering, will we still get tuition in? How long will we last if we don't? What about paying staff? All of those big picture items that can really get you. So we started anticipating COVID in January and started making, after the initial flush of a little bit of panic and concern, started making kits, even in toddler. What kind of kits could we make to send home? Because in my mind, I thought maybe this would be 3 weeks, maybe. Every consecutive week or so, I was more disillusioned about my prediction. But we started making kits and thinking about that. What could we send home that would be Montessori appropriate? So you have to think. And what I always try to do in a situation like that is stop and breathe. So that's self-care as a head of school. Boy, if I could get you to do anything, it's remember you have to take care of yourself. So I'm a breather. I really do stop and breathe, and then I can think. And where that has helped me in that anticipation is when there's a situation that you somewhat can predict, that you have an idea how to act. So a story that I've been doing and have had experiences, for example, where we are located is out in a rural area. And so years have gone on that there has been school violence. So security was really important to me. And one of the capstone projects I needed to do for a certification was a large project that would help the school. And so I came up with the security emergency plan. And I based it on, at the time, what I knew and what I could find out, not only from schools, but about from other businesses. Because sometimes things are applicable to us as leaders that are in the business sector. One of the things I did first was call in the emergency preparedness person in our sheriff's office. Because we're in a rural area, the law enforcement organization is the Rock County Sheriff. And they were thrilled to be called because they rarely get people wanting to come out. They brought a whole team, and we went over my emergency plan and toured with them. And so one of the ways that that was a comfort is, yes, I was thinking about school violence, but I was also thinking about what is the more probable thing that can happen, and that would be a large weather event. Our school is on 10 acres and it has a lot of big trees, and the road going up to our school is very wooded. So if we ever had a tornado or a blowdown, which it can happen in the Midwest, it's going to be hard for someone to reach our building. It's going to be very hard because how wooded the roads are on the way to here. So just using that little bit of common sense is, I need to be sure law enforcement knows who we are and what we do. So if we need their help, they will know how to respond more effectively. So in bringing them on a tour, they were prepared. They were excited, and nothing is more impressive to upper elementary students when you walk around with 4 or 5 sheriffs in the hallway and they all look at you like, I didn't do it. But you got to use that while you can, because it was amusing nonetheless. But the sheriff's group, when I asked them, how would you anticipate if we had a weather event like this and to evacuate the children? And they replied, well, we'll blow a whistle and everyone will line up and they'll come in that bus. Oh, that's great. I'd like you to introduce you to some of these children on this end of the building. And I brought them into the toddler class and their faces just dropped. And I said, yeah, they're not going to listen to your whistle. They're not going to line up. They're actually probably going to hide. And so I want you to know that. And I want you to be sure that you communicate with everyone that could ever come to this school, because the assumption is it's all K-12, and really it's not. We're toddler and up. So that was wonderful, because it had to, at that time, while we have the time, they were able to think in their heads and put in the computer for everyone how to respond at our school appropriately for the age levels we have. That relationship has grown over the years. And through that emergency plan, I have shared the blueprints of our school. So they have it on their schematics in their computer whenever they may need to come. They have the numbers of every classroom door, because it is not translatable for me to say it's Miss Ellen's class. That means nothing to them. I needed to think that through. So on the outside of the door, it will say room 12. And on the blueprint, it says room 12. And what's wonderful about making that connection with law enforcement is now, every time they have a new deputy, they come for a tour. They just come to the door and say, hi, I was told I need to tour the school. It's a beautiful thing. And so, anticipating some of these situations and then acting upon them ahead of time is extremely helpful. And so I want to tell you a story where it came home. I have a few, but I'm going to stick with the one that is probably the most unanticipating type of story. but one that having that relationship with law enforcement for our school really helped. I came to school one day early in the morning, had my cup of tea. It was a pretty day. Parked in the parking lot and looked over at the entrance and saw a sheriff's car. I thought, oh, that's not good. That's not a good day. You take that deep breath. I wonder why the sheriff's here. Maybe they just wanted a tour early. I doubt it. So I got to the entrance and he said, ma'am, I have to tell you something quick. In town, we're on the outskirts of a town. In town, there was a gun shop that was broken into last night. Over 25 semi-automatic guns were stolen, along with ammunition. We received a communication from one of the friends of a suspect that they intend to shoot up a school today and the courthouse. That's all I can tell you right now. This is credible. And there was a gun just a half hour ago found on a school grounds. So I'll be back, probably. You decide what you're going to do. And he took off. Yeah, that's one of those days that you think, I have to think about my life choices, you know? When I was a teacher, I had to worry about practical life and where I could find things at Goodwill. And it was such a simple life. And it's not simple anymore. But thinking, breathing, and going into problem solving mode. So I needed to think before I act. I need to listen and ask. And I did ask him one more time, tell me again what you just said. I slowed down for a couple of minutes and then I kicked into problem solving mode because I had 5 minutes before arrival. I already had teachers in the building. I already had before care children in the building. So what am I going to do? It's credible. I'm faced with a dilemma and I have to make a decision. Now in our school, I have a nonprofit board, but when it comes to decisions that affect the school community, that decision is up to me. So in my problem solving mode, the first thing I thought is I want to be 100% transparent with the families. They need to know about this. They can make a decision what they're going to do with their children. And that was my first focus. So I sent one person down to tell teachers there's an emergency. I can't explain what it is right now, but things are going to be a little different for the next 10, 15 minutes. So when parents would drop off their children, I told them we're having an emergency parent meeting. Please park your car, come into the gym. You can imagine the look on their faces. It was chilling. All kinds of things running through their head. All kinds of things running through my head and heart in trying to figure out how am I going to say this? And so I got them all in and said, here's what happened. Told them the story exactly and said, you decide. I can't make this decision for you, whether your child should stay in this school. I don't know how long we're going to stay open, but you need to decide this. I can't make this decision for you. I'm also going to be telling the teachers when I can, and I will let them make that decision as well if they want to stay. So generally in pretty quick fashion, parents quietly and calmly got their children and went home. There was one or two that stopped and needed to call somebody, needed to process, needed to ask some more questions. But about, I'd say 80% of our population turned around and left. The teachers didn't say anything. Then we spread out to inform the teachers, who for some of them were concerned about their own children in other schools, high schools, etc. And they asked to leave. And we granted that because we had enough staff spread out. We then went and called all of the before care parents to tell them of the situation. And they came and got their children. And at about 10 o'clock, there was a sheriff in the parking lot, and his job was to protect the school while we had other people pick up. And that's where I continued to get more information about the situation at hand. So this was not a one-person work. This took a team that was ready to just act and do our best and not panic and not dicker or fuss with who's going to do what, because we all have that sometimes. When there's a situation, people will say, but you didn't tell me first. And it was, this isn't what's important right now. So by about 11 o'clock, everyone was picked up. All the staff left. We locked up the building, and the police sheriff said, thank you very much. Now I can divert resources somewhere else. It would have been incredibly hard for a school bigger than us or that had buses to do what we did. That would have probably been near impossible. It took those other schools probably hours to find out how they were going to get children, to go through their school boards to get approvals, that sort of thing. But one by one they did. And this issue in our town lasted for 5 days. There wasn't church, there wasn't, baseball practice. Everything was shut down till they were able to find the people, the suspects, and arrest them. So I couldn't have really anticipated that would happen in that way, but I had already anticipated security. And then that difficult time was then really valuable for when it was over to debrief. We debriefed internally with our staff. We debriefed with parents who then really wanted to talk about it, part of this healing, grieving, healing process again. And we had the sheriff back out. How do we do? What should we have done differently? That kind of thing, and trying to assess it. So having a good team is really helpful, but also starting to think about things that you could guess are the most likely things to happen your difficult time, and then what is not as likely. I would say my view is sustainable leadership, and you are not sustainable if you're not taking care of your health, mental and physical. And I see a lot of administrators, particularly women, think that the way to be a great leader is to work themselves into the ground, where they are not at their best and they're not modeling how to take care of themselves. I was at a workshop in Florida a couple of years ago, and as we were talking about sustainability and stress, she shared that she had been hospitalized with exhaustion last year. And she said, so I guess that's normal, right? And there were several of us shaking our head going, no, it shouldn't be. And so I implore leaders to have a team mindset. Invite the talents and the thoughts of others. So I have a administrative team, but then I have curriculum coordinators and our assistants. I call them our thought leaders, because our assistant teachers, we'd be nothing without them. And they often have insight that we might miss. So encourage your thought leaders to help you with being a sustainable leader through difficult times. And build that community by invitation and connection. It's really important. And if you follow Brene Brown, who I highly recommend for leaders, one of the things that she advocates, one of her sayings is clear is kind. And it really is important that you have clarity and that you're clear as often as you can. The other part about being a sustainable leader is you need everyone to help you during difficult times. And with that, we're always thinking of training leaders in our classrooms, right? With our children, we're giving them that invitation. We're giving them connection in a 3-year cycle for them to be the leaders. Shouldn't we be doing that with our staff? ourselves. So consider that on your journey. I also believe it's really important that if we're going to really think about the spiritual preparation of the child, we have to think of the spiritual preparation of the Montessori leader. We know that the spiritual preparation of the Montessori teacher is important, but it's so important for us as leaders. And so this is a struggle, but be reflective without guilt. You can think about it, try not to let it get to you, but in difficult times, being reflective of what you've done, how you did it, how it turned out, how you might do differently is really important. And being kind to yourself, because it will help you be the same to others, is really important. I try my best to use empathy, but probably what I do the most is try to seek to understand a situation or a person or a family. Because if I can try to figure out why is it that something is going on with that family, then I can build some bridges with them. And if there is a difficulty, a divorce, a serious illness, etc., I might be able to figure out how to brainstorm with them and how to help them get through this. I try humor as much as I can. I do joke. I do smirk sometimes. I do try to make light when it's needed, because it does help you get through the day. And as it was said in the beginning and is said often, leadership is lonely. It really is. In the bottom line, there are things that you know that you can't share with other staff members, particularly if it has to do with HR. And you can't defend or make public some of these decisions either that you have to make. And it can be perceived differently from families or whatever. So in those difficult times, it is lonely. And much of what you're doing by getting together as this group is getting helps bridge that. So it is not so solitary. I do try to keep in mind the old saying, this too shall pass, because quite often it does. People need time to process. People need time to let their emotions go through. And certainly we are seeing that with COVID right now, is as we go from one stage to another stage, things are changing. And some of our initial panic or anxiety is passing, even though we're all very cautious. I always like to say this, life is lifelike, because it just is. Things happen that are not in your control, and you have to let it go. You can't solve all the problems, but maybe you're just there to listen and be with someone. And that might be a staff member that's going through a difficult family time or has had a diagnosis that is very frightening. I think the more that we can be there for someone, to be in that space, to be that listener, and we don't always have to have the answers, because we don't. We just don't have the ability. We can't make light. We can't make it go away, but we can be there to listen and be with someone. There is always no substitute for a professional counselor for others, meaning children or families or teachers. And I like to have resources ready. So every year I try to update a file of all types of counselors that could possibly help a family or a staff member. And truly try to normalize that, using our Montessori term, that we all need help, and that everybody's got something. Everybody needs some type of assistance to get through life, and have these resources ready for families or staff. So it just while you have that teachable moment, while you have it as well. I think also one of the things I'd like to say is that with every sunrise, there's hope for a new beginning. And I'll say that even with some of my older students who are convinced it's the end of the world, they messed up or they said things they shouldn't have said, and it'll never be different, etc., is that every time the sun rises, there's hope for a new beginning. And in the same way, I try to frame that with teachers, that they can look at a child's difficult behavior is that should reset every day. Not holding on to what's gone wrong. Yes, you can have that in your mind, but let it go with that hope for a new beginning, because you're more able to let it in, and enjoy what is different and what is exciting with the child when they make that little ounce of progress. Otherwise, you're always skeptical. So having that hope in humanity is really important for us as well. I'd always remind you to stay curious. Montessori communities are like any community. Sometimes they can have a lot of drama. Some people flock to drama. They're drawn to it. Others like to stir the pot and make drama, where I would love them to get a hobby. That's hard in our communities when that happens. There's things you can't control with that, other than to try to diffuse. I call it my drama index. I also find sometimes people with unmet needs. So we're always looking for children with their unmet needs. Some of our families with unmet needs, who do need that hobby, can always go to the negative. And I can call them sometimes what I like to say are misery mongers. They got to be there for every sad thing. They have to find anything that they're going to get upset about. It's rare, but they're there. And when they're there, I balance that difficulty with listening, but also reframing. So I do my best to not feed it. And I encourage teachers to not feed it. I can't control what the other parents might do, but you will notice that if you have a misery monger, eventually people just start getting away from them and not spending as much time with. And that's a natural consequence of that type of living. I remind my teachers and myself that people are so busy, and particularly prior to COVID, it was almost like a treadmill of how busy people were. No matter how much you tried to encourage them to slow down, and enjoy that little gift they have in their 3-year-old right now, because it's that one moment in time that they're 3. And you can have a great lesson about parts of the fish. And that 3-year-old will look at you and say, yeah, but I have a dog. Well, that's the fun of a 3-year-old. You have to revel in that joy. But, people forget that when they're always on this treadmill. And one thing, too, that helps me help to seek to understand is generally, when you think about it, if you have a community of young children in particular, toddlers and children's house, I would guess 80% of your population is sleep deprived. So I just want to say that again, 80% of your population is sleep deprived. They aren't going to always be on their best. They aren't going to always react to a teacher's comment in the most logical frame. And so if we can anticipate the difficulty that might be going on with them, and not take it personally, and realize they're dog tired, they're not going to be on their best. So that always helps. Continue to find your community of leaders for support. We're all in this together. We all have things to share and wonderful talents. take classes, take trainings, get more credentials if you wish to boost your skill set. And then the link I have at the bottom is our training program for school leadership. There are many school leadership programs that are now will be getting MACD accredited. Always consider those, or professional development to help you along your way. So with that, I thought I'd stop and open up for discussion and questions or comments. Kathleen?
I thought it was beautiful the way you went through everything so simply but profoundly. Like you gave us just enough, not too much, but the things that you said were essential. And I believe, as you do, that empathy and compassion when working with our staff and parents and children goes a long, long way. And I do have a pot stir teacher on my staff, so I chuckled when you gave me that little bit. So, yes. So
They are.
Thank you.
You're
Yes.
very welcome, Kathleen.
Yes, amazing. They do
Appreciate it.
exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary Lou.
Oh, thank you, Martha. That was excellent. I loved everything you said. How are you anticipating, talking about anticipation, that, schools are going to change next year. We're going to have presumably, we don't know for sure, but it looks like more and more children will be on campus. And so I'm sure, based on your presentation, you've given this a lot of thought. What is your thinking about the reopening of schools in the fall? What are you anticipating and planning, if you are?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. Thank you, Mary Lou. So I'm very fortunate that this last summer, when we were still on lockdown, we opened for a modified, very somewhat odd summer school in July in our area. I started nudging our county health department in the spring and said, I need to know, and there's other private school principals that need to know, I'm sure, of how we can best navigate quarantines and procedures and everything. And I just was dogmatic with them. I was a stalker, I think, almost, if I need to confess. But the good news was we got a group together of, I was the only Montessori school, and there was other parochial schools, and the health department granted us a weekly meeting with their experts. And so every Wednesday morning, just recently we've gone to every other Wednesday, we go through all the scenarios, all the preparations, etc. Since we were opening summer school and I was the only person open in the summer, I found a document that was a parent sign off and a staff member sign off on basically, here's the rules of what we have to do to go through COVID. You will tell us if you're exposed. You will not send your child at all when they're ill, and even for staff, you are part of the solution. So you won't put yourself in a risky situation. Now you have to navigate that really carefully with HR and legal, but you're basically saying, think about this, that kind of thing. So we had very good luck, determination, willing parents, willing staff to get us through this year. With some virtual, and then we closed down for, say, between Thanksgiving and Christmas for a little bit, and then after January. So looking forward to this year and summer school that's starting, for our summer school, we're keeping masks on inside, but we can have masks off outside. I'm anticipating that there's a good chance that'll happen in the fall. I'll be happy if it's not, but I do think that there will be, an interesting caveat as far as how people will view vaccinating their children. Already, I've had some of our oldest kids get vaccinated. I've got about an 82% of our staff vaccinated. That's our weakest link, frankly, is the adults. That's the weakest link. We're dogmatic on watching to see who has any kind of symptoms, and that those kids can't be here. We just are. None of us got the flu this year. None of us got strep for once this year. The cleaning has helped. So I'm anticipating, I actually circulated with staff. What do we want to keep? What was valuable? What can't we wait to get rid of? And it was a beautiful thing because they all had a voice. So, keeping that Montessori voice in there. So what do they want to keep? They want to keep using Microban as a cleaner and as a disinfectant. They don't want to touch bleach again in their lives. What do they want to keep? They want to wear masks at flu season. Make that optional. We moved a sick room from my office to an actual room. So I don't have kids getting sick in my office. That was, I got to think every once in a while. That was a good thing. We didn't want to do the cohorts, and it doesn't look like we have to if we do some decent social distancing. And we have really good square footage here. We're blessed with really good square footage. So we will keep our tables a little farther apart. Now, oddly enough, elementary loved, it took a lot of staff, but under the PPP funding, I had the money to pay people. So even when we were closed, I had assistants in the building making a ton of bead bars out of pony beads and pipe cleaners. It was a sweatshop, I must say, a sweatshop of love. But we made our own little personalized movable alphabets. We made our own pony bead bars for our older kids. And so in the lower elementary in particular, everyone would have their own rug that they took home on a Friday for the families to wash and bring back. And they pretty much brought back their own personalized movable alphabet, their own bead bar set. That's more of at this point, a precaution. Ventilation is probably key, the biggest. I did endure a very high heating bill this winter by leaving windows open a little bit, plus having an additional instrument on our furnaces that would help. Once it got super cold like it does in the Midwest, I said, all right, you got to shut the windows or they won't ever shut. Because, when you get to that 20 below time in January, your windows freeze. So we able to do that. So I anticipate that there's a possibility that some of our children, particularly a few that have medical conditions, serious medical conditions, if they're not vaccinated, we might have to extend some virtual for them. However, I can also anticipate and see that I need a really good policy that virtual doesn't mean that I just want to go on virtual because we feel like going to Florida, or we feel like staying home today because it's raining, or any of those other things. So I'm already thinking with each team, what is our limits with that? And where will we go and where we won't go? So if almost all of our families are back, we just have two families, and it's because one of them, they're bubbled together. The child has an extraordinary heart condition. Until she gets vaccinated, which hopefully will happen in July, this could be deadly. And so, of course, we support that family. They're amazing family, amazing kids. They've had a huge sacrifice doing this, where they have bubbled and not been out. But I think those are some things that are easy, that policy of when you'll do virtual and when you won't, because there could be some setbacks. I would love to say we're not going to, but I'm anticipating some of that, some setbacks, some fears. For my non-vaccinated teachers, I don't know. I don't know. That is a concern. But there's also a legal concern and an ethical concern in trying to make somebody do something that they're not comfortable with. And then with what we did decide is this year, we did not have parents in the building, except at before care and after care. Wow. No separation anxiety, no crying in the hallway. Oh, we videoed it a couple times, just the pure independence and joy of it. So we're not going back. So mornings, parents drop off at the door, but we'll have them in the afternoon. Probably, I would say our usual events are outside in the fall. What we're already thinking about is we might not be able to do our holiday sing in December, where we normally had grandmas and grandpas and cousins in the gym and all of that. We're keeping one little thought that maybe that's not a good idea, and we'll do it. We'll think about it eventually. So forecasting that. I think also the other thing is just making sure that parents understand that there is no going back to the, I gave them a bunch of Tylenol, but I didn't really tell you that when my child is sick. And that just takes our diligence and support of staff, but also not going too far, because children that are teething drool and they do get a runny nose. So it is a very tricky little thing. So anticipating that with COVID, I think those are the biggies that I can think of now.
So are you saying, Martha, that you're not going to mandate vaccines at your school?
At this point, yes. I'm not going to mandate it. I'm strongly encouraging. Right now, I have one staff member who is not vaccinated, but she had it. So she has some type of immunity for some period of time. And another one who's pregnant. And she did not want it before pregnancy and doesn't want it now. So that's where I it could be the kind of thing that life choices, caution, that sort of thing. Boy, was it difficult when just with the adults and staff and the anxiety levels with some, and then the lack of consideration with others. You just get this, this year was such a learning curve for how do people react to knowing that somebody went to a wedding with 150 people that weekend, and now they're sniffling. And this other person who's very afraid because of her children and herself and her family. And these were coworkers that normally, could have skipped down your hallway together, happy as clams. So there's healing, there's adjusting that I think will go all summer. It certainly has gone all spring. I have seen some bringing back together of kindness and of relaxation and maybe some tentative forgiveness if there needed to be any, but also some PTSD of, oh my God, what if? And I think as heads of school, when we start thinking about navigating another shutdown, I don't know. Maybe I should go into another line of work. I don't know.
Martha, I just want to commend you on the one thing you said today. For me, that resonated so strongly is our thought leaders are our assistants. Oh, that is so profound. That's such a profound statement. And I'm going to quote you on that
Yeah.
everywhere I go. Because
Good.
such,
I love assistance.
it's such a, anyway, thank
Yeah,
you.
without a really, there are ears and our eyes. I even ask one assistant if I am hiring people and that person that I'm thinking of hiring is observing in a classroom. I ask her opinion. And she's like this barometer of, like those, it's a very long time ago. The way to tell if it was going to rain is whether the Dutch girl goes in or the Dutch boy goes out. Boy, Mary W. can nail it. If somebody is going, because you want someone that's a good fit for your staff community. Do they fit in your culture? Are they already kind of too uptight, or are they critical, or are they wonderful and see the joy? If they're on a observation and they're already, fault finding or scowly or whatever, this may not be a good marriage. And I want to date for a while too. I'm cautious, but some of my best teachers were people that were assistants first.
Yeah.
Because they had no illusions of what the job was. And I know one person that she likes to hire people that were previous waiters or waitresses, because
I'm one of those.
if you ever have to multitask,
Yep.
it's doing that work, right?
I've driven my husband crazy over the years, because if I have a really great waitress somewhere, I will get right into their history. Like, well, how long have you been doing this? And it usurps the meal, and he'll go, oh God, here she goes again. But I have found great people for that same reason.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That and taking your prospective hires out to dinner, right? And see how they treat the wait staff.
That's right. I do it both ways. I've said, I always, when I'm down, I've narrowed the search. We go out because I like to see how they treat others who are in service. And it really tells me a lot.
Mhm.
Right down to if they don't put in their chair at the table. I talked about this. It just tells you a lot. And I just think it's human nature. It's looking for that person who fits into the culture of your school and what's important. And that's grace and courtesy, a lot of it.
And the assistants have their eyes and ears on the ground with your families too.
They
And
certainly,
so when they feel encouraged that their perspective matters, their observations matter, they might come to you and say, I'm concerned about so-and-so family because, mom came and picked up today and she was crying. And I asked her if she was okay. And she said, her life is going to hell in a handbasket, and what do I do? And then it gives you a little bit of an opening to how you can support your families. How may you approach this person, if at all, what you might look for. It then, when there's a situation like an illness or a tragedy, you have this, the community organically comes together because they all have felt that they have a responsibility. And so there shouldn't be a delineation of responsibility in the way that we are all equally responsible for trying to be a loving and kind and aware community. And that goes from anywhere from security to this family looks like they're having a hard time. Many of our families, we're their extended family. And so that is a big responsibility, but it also can be really gratifying when you can make that positive difference, when that assistant at the end of the day, which is like your last impression, really helps them through a rough patch. That's why I really advocate that, don't forget the person that is your last impression at the end of the day. They should be professional. They should be encouraged, and they should feel dignity in their work and value. every way you can, no matter how often you tell them, but professional development, stature, it has to do with respect.
I liked also your stand on masks, wearing masks in the fall. We are also going to do that in the face of a governor who's saying not necessary. Parents who are saying the county's coming out June 4th with a statement about masks. Will you comply? What will you do? And we've lost 3 students already because we've said they will be wearing masks in the fall.
Yep. When we had a similar type of thing, our health department came with a statement really fast for all of us school leaders to say, this may apply to adults outside, but because of the nature of schools and because that we want schools to stay open and outbreak free, we want masks to stay on for the rest of the school year. And we just shared that document with our parents, and that was great. Since we're the only ones open in summer school, we're going to do the same. Inside we will have masks on, and so will the children. And yes, in the beginning, I lost a couple families too, Kathleen.
Right.
And some that were really, one that was really just really off the wall. But I also looked at it as, if I can think of how tough this year is going to be, you're a welcome departure then, because I don't need it.
Right. And we just had 4-year-olds, sorry. One in each of our primary classes. The one has COVID and was in school. So we had to close that class for 14 days. They'll come back 1 week before we close. And he was on a photo shoot, and the photographer had it. And then in the other class, a child had it, but had not been in school for the amount of time that the health department said he did not do any damage to the children. So we were able to keep that classroom open. And so, it's like, it's a no-brainer, it seems. As you say, because of the nature of what we do and the vulnerability of our population.
Well, and some of the young children that generally they can have an okay case, but what if they have an undiagnosed heart issue or kidney issue or whatever the case may be that can make this go further?
Right.
Isn't the inconvenience worth it, is what I try to put out to our families. And for many, the ones that stayed virtual longer, particularly that were older, they wouldn't have come back if we would have discarded masks. They
Right.
just would have not. They wouldn't have felt safe. A lot of staff, I don't know how I would have kept the building running, let alone myself.
Right.
So I anticipate that it's not all said and done, that there's going to be bumps along the road, but that hopefully we're on a better incline, and that maybe, just maybe, we have a little more gratitude, a little more love, and a little more time to think about what's really important in our lives. And maybe our families can have a little more time of what's important in their lives. Maybe this was in some ways a reset for, you don't have to find all the ways that you don't spend time with your children by 700 other lessons after school, but maybe you can find that there's actually some joy of being together as a community, as a family. And I'm hopeful that's how we come out.
Me too.
Thank you.
I mean, unless anyone else has any questions, I think that's a great note to end on. I mean, you've said so many great things over this past hour, Martha, and I'm sure you will be quoted several times. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at future town halls as well. Martha, you're always welcome to join in. All Montessori leaders are welcome. And thank you for everyone who came and spent an hour with us. And hopefully everyone learned something great from Martha. She had plenty of wisdom to share. So thank you.
It was an honor to be here, and I love meeting more Montessorians, so I will try to come. Thank you very much. I
Aw,
appreciate it.
thank you.
Bye-bye now.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.